Imagine being thrust into the spotlight. All eyes are on you. But it's not because of something you've done, but because something terrible has been done to you. A few years after it first emerged, the MeToo movement has made its way to Taiwan. And while it's brought the issues of sexual assault and misconduct out of the shadows, for victims, speaking out often comes at great personal cost. In this episode of Gen Taiwan, we hear from the people trying to sustain Taiwan's MeToo moment, long enough to bring about lasting change.
In the shadows of Taipei's sprawling skyline, a new wave of the MeToo movement is emerging. The voices of survivors, once whispers, now reverberate loudly across the island nation.
它让我在生理上跟心理上都觉得自己是一个无能的人。
他们说恐惧的这个对象呢，并不是一个政治人物，也不是一个黑道大哥，并不是我们外界觉得这个恐惧是很理所当然的。
但我觉得我没有其他选择，就是我觉得这是我要说出来必须付的代价。
The fight back was sparked by a Netflix drama, and now brave voices are breaking age-old silences.
就是我想所有的人都在等开第一枪的人。
Politicians and the law have been put in the spotlight, accused of failing to protect victims and effectively punishing abusers.
而我却需要在po文之后，每天随身带着防狼喷雾，我也都确信法律不会帮上我的忙。
People are rejecting the deeply ingrained values of previous generations.
那这老男人很长，就是挂在嘴边，就我这样会被迷途
他本身就是一个错的事情的时候，他应该无时无刻，只要想说、想要讨回公道的时候，他都可以去讲。
And as the movement has gathered speed, male victims are now overcoming social stigma and finding their voice.
我们可能在传统的概念上面，他们都会觉得，怎么会有一个男性当成受害人？所以讲出来。
As Taiwan grapples with changes to the law and traditional attitudes, how much progress has this MeToo movement made, and will it permanently change Taiwanese society?
一根筷子很容易折断，但是如果一把筷子的话，它就是一股力量。
停的在想那些事情，然后当你在想那些事情的时候，会做噩梦，会心跳加速，会发抖。
Su Wen-shen is an art critic. Her teacher invited her to his house to sit for him during a shoot. But she says that those were not his true intentions.
我其实已经不记得实际上过了多久，然后在这整个过程里面都只想着希望事情赶快结束，觉得为什么会发生这种事情，觉得很尴尬的自己。
The psychological aftermath often outweighs the event itself, leading to recurring distress.
因为对我来说，性暴力它并不只是当下的暴力，而是在事后，当受害者他必须要独自一个人一直返回到那些记忆里面的时候，他其实要自己一个人面对那些对自己的质疑，那些质疑包含为什么我在当下没有反抗，为什么我在事后还可以跟那个伤害我的人继续对话，即便你身体不真的有遭受到侵害，可是权势的不对等都有办法制造出一个让人恐惧的情境。然后这个不对等其实是很多性暴力里头的本质。
Wen-shen stayed silent for years, but during this MeToo wave, she finally spoke out against her alleged abuser, and some of his other victims followed suit. There is a growing anger against the authorities, who are accused of disregarding allegations like this in the past, consequently dissuading abuse victims from stepping forward.
我也都确信法律不会帮上我的忙，但是在没有物证的状态下面，即便有这么多间接的证据，都没有达到可以起诉他的门槛。
For Wen Shen and many other survivors, the grip of trauma extends into daily life, creating continued anxiety.
在下班的时候，要随时注意身边有没有其他人，而我却需要在po文之后，每天随身带着防狼喷雾，直到现在都还没有付出应得的代价。
Hui Chenfang is a journalist and activist who has been bringing to light abuse cases during the course of this MeToo wave.
我想这个它就像一个压力锅一样，这个东西其实已经压了很久了。我想在台湾社会，一开始是由这个民进党里面的这个就比较基层的工作人员先出来讲，其实我想所有的人都在等开第一枪的人。
After a string of sexual harassment allegations rocked Taiwan's ruling party, the DPP, in June 2023, 4 representatives bowed in front of a packed conference room, apologizing for mishandling the internal investigations and the toxic culture. Taiwan's president and the leader of the DPP, Tsai Ing-wen, hailed this moment of national reflection.
It's a very a significant thing here in Taiwan because this represents really a very important step in our democratic development.
As MeToo spread over all corners of the island, many here are no longer prepared to let injustices go unaddressed. Hui Chengfang's search for justice began when she was an abuse victim of a powerful media executive early on in her career.
我不想要再去想我跟那个大佬的事情，因为那个真的会让我感到非常大的恐惧。去做出这种性骚扰甚至是性侵这样的一个人，他通常会是他那个领域的一个非常成功的人。一个他其实享有各种各样的资源。
Despite her fears about the damage he could do to her career, she decided to speak out against her abuser.
但就是一个突然的起心动念，我就具名 MeToo， 我实际就把他的名字写出来。那当然就是他后来也对我反击啊，种种之类的。就是当然对我也造成了某种心灵上的创伤。
After her story began to gather attention, other victims approached her for help.
当然，后来外界会觉得说，我非常有正义感，我帮很多女性发声。一些女性她们没有办法自己出来具名 MeToo， 她们就会写讯息给我，说我可不可以帮她们贴她们的 MeToo 的文章。但是因为里面写了很多当时这个被性骚扰甚至是性侵的细节，所以当然一开始我是先转贴一些他们在脸书上面具名 MeToo 的，但是因为那大概就是在我转贴之后呢，他们就是也会有很多人跟进转贴，那加害者完全都知道他们是谁。所以这个其实也是非常危险，都有可能被提告的可能。
Hui Chen has helped numerous victims tell their stories. But during this MeToo wave, she noticed that other parts of Taiwan society also started to find their voice.
我想不只是女性啦，也有男性出来 MeToo， 非常勇敢的这个动能。
为什么要说？因为我觉得我没有做错事情，就是做错事情的不是我，我为什么要遮遮掩掩的？就是我如果今天光明磊落、正大光明，我没有做错事情，我不需要去掩盖我的身份。我觉得我讲出来的代价就是我势必得要跟这个人一起，就是。
Li Yuanchun is one of those male victims coming forward. According to statistics released by the Ministry of Education, in 2022, 24% of campus sexual harassment survivors were men.
我们可能在传统的概念上面，他们都会觉得，怎么会有一个男性当成受害人？就是这在大家比较传统的概念里面是很难接受跟很难理解。
After Yuanchun told his story, there was a surge in instances involving male victims, contributing to the current MeToo movement's foundation. 9 years ago, Yuanchun was invited to the U.S. by a prominent anti-China politician.
那当时他给我的邀约是说啊，我可以就是他可以下机招待，然后我自己出机票钱。
But after arriving at a New York hotel room, Yuanchun realized that they would be sharing a room.
一开始就是他可能就是也是坐在床上做自己的事，就是怎么不看一下，就是外面有什么风景啊，就是怎么感觉好像对外面的景色兴致缺，所以他就希望我过去，所以我就过去。但我没想到是他在我过去之后就是用力的情报。
The attack got worse, but Yuanchun managed to stop it from progressing any further. Because of the powerful political position of his abuser, Yuanchun has subsequently been too afraid to speak out.
无论你今天高矮胖瘦，或是你今天美丑，或是怕，就是无论你的外形怎么样，我喜不喜欢跟想不想要跟这个人有这样子的接触，这是我自己个人的意愿。如果你不能尊重我这件事情，那你就是在侵犯我。
The government has been trying to reform its sexual assault laws. Under proposed changes, an employer found guilty of sexual harassment could be fined up to 1 million Taiwanese dollars and jailed for up to 3 years.
立法当然现在这个立法院正在努力，那最近也有一些新的进展了。但是立法罚在那，现在也有很多相关的这个防止性犯罪的罚，可是终究来还是观念。
A local politician, Chung Pei-chun, shines a light on some of the recent legislative changes.
所以其实我觉得，在这一件事件或者这一连串事件之后，其实最重要的是教育，而这些都不是一朝一夕立法之后就能够改变的事情了。因为教育就跟价值观一样，它是需要日积月累叠加起来的。那我希望这一波事件，或者是说很多人都希望在这一连串的风暴当中，找到你有得到教育意义的位置吧。
But as Pei-chun points out, even more important than education is the need for accountability amongst peers.
这是第二层，我觉得要突破的价值观。被冒犯的人，也许他还没有主动开口，其他在座的人已经都出声制止，你不应该说这样子的话，你踩到了红线，你应该跟他道歉的。MeToo 这件事情才是到了一个我觉得我期待的，你说目的地好了。
It's clear that this is just the beginning. With more survivor stories from the past emerging, these new conversations are redefining what's acceptable.
部分对我来说重要的事情是，他提醒我，受害者不需要担心自己不是一个完美的受害者。当我可以辨识自己是一个受到创伤的主体的时候，我其实可以更接受自己，更诚实的面对自己。
我觉得我很希望，就是所有的成年人能够经由这一次台湾的 MeToo 事件，去重新学习人与人之间的身体的界限，不是随随便便就能跨越的。
Taiwan's MeToo movement might have started late, but it burns brightly, resonating with voices old and new. A beacon of hope for generations to come.
当中，我觉得比较欣慰的事情是，会有民众跟我分享他们从这一波事件里面他们所看到或者是他们所得到的想法，包括有一些是爸爸，他告诉我说，他从我的身上看到，原来女生是不需要别人帮助，然后才需要去把这件事情说出来，替自己说话，甚至替别人说话。然后他小孩现在才小学，
对，台湾有努力的试着在现行阶段做出了一个 可被改变的事实，我觉得这个是值得鼓励的。但我更希望看到的是，大家要去回过头来想，每个世代的进步的概念都必须要从教育开始。
To discuss that episode and Taiwan's MeToo movement, we're joined by our three panelists. We have Grace Wu, who's a student at Taipei's Mingchuan University. We have Tsai Mingqi, a MeToo rally organizer based in Taipei. And for an international perspective, we have Marcin Jerzewski, head of the Taiwan office at the European Value Center, a think tank. So first off, I wanted to ask you, we've seen this video, this Vice video. I wondered if you could give your kind of first immediate reactions to some of what you saw in that video.
I've never heard about they wanted to increase the education of Taiwan. So I think it's truly important for the teenagers to have this knowledge about the sexual things. Maybe they will be curious about it and do some bad things in the future. So yeah, it's true needed to have an increase the education.
The video focuses on the what conditions are the survivors or victims facing now. And that really touches me because it points out how difficult it is for a survivor to speak out. People have the values or standards themselves. They often think that if it occurs to you, it must be you do something wrong. But the victims or the survivors, they say they're not doing anything wrong. And we should always ask why the harassers do that, not to ask the survivors why it happens on you. Yeah.
One of the most striking statements in the video is the expression by Ms. Su that she doesn't believe that the law would protect her. And I think that this is a very clear and a very striking manifestation of the fact that the state is failing people in Taiwan. The state is failing to establish institutions that would be able to effectively implement the laws that are supposed to protect people from sexual harassment.
From your observations, how big a problem do you think sexual assault or misconduct is in Taiwan? How prevalent do you think it is amongst the society?
I think, yes, it's really issues for Taiwanese needed to face this kind of things. But I would like to say it's hard too. It's hard for those populations to speak out and to stand out what they are happening right now.
We have very clear examples that sexual harassment and sexual assault is a problem that faces very diverse demographics. And I think that it is very telling that we have women survivors who are speaking out, we have men survivors who are speaking out, we have members of the LGBTQI+ community who are talking about their experiences. And just as you mentioned, a lot of people are not really ready to speak their truth yet. So if just the small slice of survivors that are speaking out right now is so diverse, then it doesn't leave much to imagination how many other sectors are affected.
What do you think it is about Taiwanese society that makes it more difficult for people to speak out and speak publicly about the experiences that they've had?
I think there are a lot of reasons, and back to our cultural restrictions, women or everyone are taught to be nice. We have to protect ourselves, and also we are taught to be patient. We have to endure our emotions because that's how we grow. And when this happens, it's hard for us to speak out because usually when victims or survivors, when they need to speak out, they have to repeatedly going back to the scenes or memories again. And on the court, even there are still protections, but it's still a really hard time for these survivors to go through. Most of the sexual violence happens when you speak out, but you lack evidence. So you are easily to be betrayed by the whole system. And also, for men in the toxic masculinity, they are hard or they are not expected to speak out. Yes, or it's hard for them to admit that.
And the catalyst for Taiwan's Me Too movement was, as they mentioned in the video, this Netflix series Wave Makers, which became enormously popular and influential in Taiwan. What was it about this show at this moment that was the catalyst and what caused this really widespread discussion and genuine change? What do you think it was about the show, Martin? Have you seen it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a great production, and I think that its release was also very timely because it coincided with the start of a campaign ahead of the upcoming legislative and presidential elections in Taiwan. And I think that to see one's own experiences, to have representation, has really empowered a lot of people to speak up. And the fact that the show is so localized, that it really tells the story of Taiwanese politics at the right time, made it a very powerful cultural product.
What did you both think of the show?
Me Too movement has been suppressed for a long time. We didn't speak out, but it is so prevalent that in our life, as a female, we must have at least one friend or even ourselves have the experience of being sexual harassed. It is so common and it's so prevalent, but in our education, we are never taught to, we never have emotional education, like how to say yes, how to say no. If I don't like it, how can I respond to it?
I think that show is more talk about our government of facing these issues. But I have to say, they only have 4 years, one return. How could they really choose? How could they really change the situation in Taiwan? It's really hard for them, and it's really hard for all of the system right now.
Minty, I wanted to ask you, because you've been involved in some of the Me Too rallies and been involved in organizing them. What was the kind of motivation for you to become involved in that? And what has the response been from Taiwanese people who have attended the rallies or seen the rallies take place?
The idea of hosting a rally starts from my friend in Zhanghua University. The main goal of the rally is to try to raise the awareness from internet into real life. So we want to host a rally and try to gather people to start from the perspectives of survivors, and we try to point back to the root of this issue, like why this happens so repeatedly, and why sexual violence is hard to speak out, and what should we do to accompany them at laws or as a friend or as an audience. How can we do to try to boost this and make it better?
And Martine, how do you think the kind of public response in Taiwan compares to other parts of the world? Because we've seen the Me Too movement kind of develop and evolve over the past few years in Europe and the US. How do you think the kind of public response in Taiwan compares to those places?
I think that since political parties were involved in the very first wave of public coming out about survivor stories, the political process trying to address injustices related to sexual harassment cases was extremely speedy. So I think that while I still maintain that the state has demonstrated to have disappointingly low capacity in implementing these laws, the process of amending them was very efficient.
Do you think this moment and this period of rapid change in Taiwan is going to be long-lasting? And what further changes do you hope will happen going forward into the future when it comes to Taiwan's Me Too movement?
What can look forward is to change in the basic problem of Taiwan, the education of things, and having those groups to help the victims to speak out, but also have to protect them at the same time, because those victims have told them about this. They have to prepare what they're going to face on. They have to prepare some weapons to protect themselves, but not expect what others will protect them. Like the police will not protect them, the governments will not protect them, the law cannot protect them.
There needs to be an understanding that sexual harassment is an issue that needs to be dealt with really holistically, and that includes education reforms, that includes better mental health protections, that includes changes in the judiciary so that victims no longer have to fear that the law will not protect them. So it remains to be seen whether the next administration is up to the task.
Because you guys all mentioned that the lacking spaces of the law, but I think it is also the limits of the law, because when you have to say someone is guilty, you need evidence, and it is really hard for sexual violences because it's hard to collect all the evidence. Sometimes just like this, and it happens, and you are also like frightening. We've already known that it is hard, and there are many gray areas in laws, or when you have to accuse someone. So we have to really put our attention back to, if they can't get justice in law, as an audience, what can we do? What can we offer for them? I think creating a safe space for them to speak up, not criticize them at the first time, at the first moment, is really important. So I think this is why we have to start to speak, start to share, start to know the background of this, the root of the issue, because we are trying to understand why it happens. It's not the fault of the victims.
Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us and sharing your insight and thoughts. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. We'll be back for the next episode of Gen Taiwan, where we delve into another topic with a great set of panelists. We'll see you next time.